This is the decision which is going to be decisive. Amongst themselves, we see that they have no means of controlling the influence of this threat to their system, and so they convene a council and they make this decision. Caiaphas, high priest that year, spurs on that precipitation of events which is going to lead to Calvary. Don't you realize it is more to your advantage to have one man die for the people than to have the whole nation destroyed? This, as the sacred author points out, can be read on two levels. And so it is that the system makes them blind to the grace. Well, during these sessions of the cross this morning, this word jumped out of the page. It's an Italian version based on the words of the Lord to St. Faustina. And when it comes to the condemnation of the Lord by human beings, essentially, the Lord addresses this word to her heart. Do not marvel, do not be surprised if at times it happens that you are suspected unjustly. I, first and foremost, io per primo, I first of all, for your love, drank that chalice of sufferings unjustly. While I was before Herod, I obtained for you the grace to be able to lift yourself above human contempt, disregard, and to follow faithfully in my footsteps. Now, this is kind of important because in practice we don't do that. When somebody pulls us down, what is our reaction? We insist on our glory there and then. Is it not true? Immediately a flood of words comes to the mind, and without filtering them, we protest our innocence. We lift our voice if necessary, and we are right. We are right, and we know we're right. Okay, we're right. But what's happened in the meantime? Our vision is what it is, human. And the opinion of others is important unto us. In the meantime, we've lost a great heap of merit. Now, there is another way of approaching the same event. It's based on the fact that if we're looking at Jesus all the time, we're asking ourselves, Lord, what does it matter what these people say and think? It's only what you care about and see that matters unto me. And if you want me right now to be as you do, in your situation of accepting and not insisting, perhaps that is your will. And I can offer up this pain, invisible that no one sees, for the salvation of souls. Now, there's a big difference in the end product. We have not made an unpleasant atmosphere. We have let the Lord defend us, and sometimes it happens not immediately, but at a second time, later on, the truth comes out. And quite often, actually, a calm, dignified reaction is far more unarming, disarming, than an immediate, noisy reaction. Actually, I just had this week a young travelling lassie, very young, who had insisted that she wanted, of all things, a lie detector test, because she knew perfectly well where the truth was. And despite the fact that it was negative, therefore that she was telling the truth, the other crowd insisted still on carrying on, colporting what they call scandal. And we can do that if we're not careful. We hand on what we've heard, and we're guilty then of perpetrating actually something which is perhaps calumny. Be careful of your words. Now, with regard to this element, it's something that we're not going to avoid, because in some shape or form, nearly on a daily basis, we're going to be confronted with this. So let's master this self-possession. There's a time to say everything, and there's a time when it's not going to have its effect. Sometimes down the line, you might have to sit somebody down calmly and say, look, there are a few things you want to know. That's the time to do it properly if they're open, not in the immediate heat. There's a time for everything under the sun, and the wrong time can lead to terrible consequences. Actually, this week, we were in chapel at 7. There were actually about 8 of us in that small chapel. It came out of nowhere that morning. And between the beginning and the end of Mass, something awful happened just outside. Because somebody did something at the wrong time. It concerned actually time. It was a gentleman, apparently from County Clare, who had to go to the village at that time of the morning in his van. And he'd remembered that he hadn't changed the time, the hour, on his clock in the car. So he started to fiddle around with it, still moving along the road. He put his hand there inside the screen to change it, and his finger went through the screen of the dashboard. So he was stuck with one hand and 2 legs to drive. He had the reaction of putting his foot on the brake and ended up putting it on the accelerator. The result was a head-on collision at high speed with my wall, the which doesn't exist anymore. All this because the right thing was done at the wrong time. And it can be also our foot being put where our brain should be. Don't say ever just the first word that comes to your mind. Filter, filter, filter. Is this word helpful? Much merit goes up in an accident like that at the wall because we didn't say the right thing at the right time. On a higher level, the dignity of the Lord also needs to be defended with regard to his rights, there where he's abused. This is a moment of reparation, first Friday of April, and I want to finish by inviting you to see the Lord also nowadays contempt. The word disprezzato doesn't come in faithfully into English, but put down, in some way, put in a box and used for our satisfaction. I mean using the worship of God to worship ourselves indirectly, and it's happening more than we think. I want to quote the head of the Congregation for Divine Worship of the Discipline of the Sacraments, Cardinal Sarah, who is warning the Church about this. It's what he refers to as the dictatorship of noise. Now, he's hitting here hard because it's precisely what enthrones man and ejects Jesus as true King of glory from his throne. Listen to this. The Church, he says, must urgently examine the ecclesial and pastoral appropriateness of these immense Eucharistic celebrations, where he's saying what's happening is that there's a lot of human festivity going on, but a lot of sacrilege to boot. He quotes, as does Pope Benedict in Sacramentum Caritatis, the phrase of St. Paul, not discerning the body. In other words, it's not just a meal. We're handling this same judge who one day will stand before us with the last word. How did you treat me? he goes into the way in which many a priest, at the beginning of the celebration, forgets completely that he's coming to the foot of the cross, and that in some way he's actually reproducing the ascent of Jesus along the Via Dolorosa as he comes up to that altar. And what he observes is this. Remember, he's head of this congregation, he knows what's going on. He views globally many a celebration throughout the Catholic world where the priest is coming up in jovial mode, waving hands here and there to this one and that one, and not at all orientating towards Calvary. It's already setting the key for a self-celebration. I mean, the people of God having a good time. But he goes on. There are many priests who enter triumphantly and go up to the altar, waving left and right in order to appear friendly. Observe the sad spectacle of certain Eucharistic celebrations. Why so much frivolity and worldliness at the moment of the Holy Sacrifice? Why so much profanation and superficiality before the extraordinary priestly grace that makes us capable of bringing forth the body and blood of Christ in substance by the invocation of the Spirit? Now this is hitting hard. Why do some believe themselves obliged to improvise or invent Eucharistic prayers that disperse the divine praises in a bath of petty human fervour? Are the words of Christ so insufficient that a profusion of purely human words is needed? In a sacrifice so unique and essential, is there a need for this subjective imagination and creativity? A good priest now is one who has a great idea that no one ever had before. And he quotes the Lord himself regarding heaping up empty words. Words, words, words. Obedience is the language of the soul, and the will is what the Lord wants in his creature, not disobedience in his presence. If the offertory is seen as nothing other than a preparation of the gifts, as a practical and prosaic action, then there will be a great temptation to add and invent ceremonies in order to fill up what is perceived as a void. He goes into his own country, Africa, dance upon dance. All kinds of objects with nothing to do with the Holy Sacrifice brought up. And that's happening too in Ireland. The objects. Footballs, pipes, anything. The death of God out of love for us is beyond all culture. He is protesting against Africanization. It is not enough simply to prescribe more silence. In order for everyone to understand that the liturgy turns us interiorly towards the Lord, it would be helpful, he goes on, for us to face the Lord. And if it can't be done, he says there should be a visible cross, which reminds us of who we're looking at. I just conclude. It came out in exorcism not long after the council, that this quasi-obligation, though it was never written down, but the correctness of having to face the people was pushed massively by you-know-who. And very few copped on to who was being enthroned in the throne of the Alpha and the Omega.